Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to another edition of Dome and Domer. My name is Mike Brammer. Joining me tonight, Ed Jordanek, also joining us from NDNation.com, Mike Coffey. All right, Ed, I always like to say that you pretty much know after the third game what kind of team you've got and what you're looking at for the rest of the season. So that being the case, why don't you enlighten us on what we're dealing with here and what we're looking forward to?
Well, I think all of us want some confirmation that Marcus Freeman is the right guy for this job. I think after the first quarter Saturday, a few of us were sort of wishing that he and Tommy Rees had gone down to Baton Rouge and that the Matt Campbell project was in
Fair enough.
in full swing. But I think if they can build on some of the brighter spots that we saw, I don't think we can get too enthusiastic, but if they can build on some of the things that we did see, namely, a defensive line and an offensive line that looked a little bit more like we thought that they would look, then, and they win a game or two that maybe right now they would not be favored in after these first three games. I think that's, it always sucks to lower expectations, but I think that's what we've got to do, and we've got to be realistic, especially with this quarterback and this collection of receivers. So, there's some limitations on defense too, but I don't know. I mean, I'm perfectly, I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm okay with an offense that moves in this direction. If that's going to be their identity, where they're going to be able to push people around and get their average per carry up over 4 and win a bunch of games, 24-17. They're winning football games and doing it that way because that's the personnel that they have. But they eliminate mistakes. They play cleaner football. They show each week that they're getting better. I think that's what we're not going to the playoffs. We're not gonna. We're not going to win the rest of our games, but we've got to have confirmation that this project is, and now that we see that it's actually a project, it's not just kind of an extension and a ascension to Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama world. That's what we've got ahead of us, and you either accept it and hope that the recruiting doesn't take a step back, and that gets us to Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama land over the course of the next several years of the Freeman tenure, and that some of these kids grow into their roles and become All-Americans. But
yeah, you're right about that. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to have the recruits, right? I mean, you can't, when it's all said and done, you can't be recruiting at a level outside of the top 10 and expect to compete in the college football playoffs. At least that's my gut instinct, is you got to be at least in the top 10. But, for all intents and purposes, at the very moment, Freeman has proven himself to be a heck of a recruiter.
Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, we haven't signed it yet, but if you look at where he was at prior to the beginning of the season, he had the number 1 class in 2023 and a pretty doggone good start on 2024. So if he can maintain those and bring him in and then fix himself, and when I mean fix himself, I mean gain the experience that he needs, because it's pretty obvious that's what we're dealing with here. We've got an inexperienced head coach who's finding his way, and it's probably going to take him this entire year and maybe a little bit into next year. Who knows? But I mean, that is where we're at as a program at the moment. And, like you say, if they can create an identity with just winning football games this year, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, do whatever you got to do to win, but he's going to have to figure this out, and he's going to have to play to his strengths. Coffee, I'm kind of curious. I kind of think I know how you're going to answer this, but it'll be interesting to see. But in the first game, Chris Tyree got 7 touches. In the second game, he got 6 touches. And all of a sudden, a lot of criticism was thrown at, for whatever however you want to slice it up, but a lot of criticism was thrown at the coaching staff that this guy needs to get a lot more touches. And lo and behold, we finished the California game and he has 23 touches.
Lo and
Okay.
behold, indeed.
Yeah. And,
I think this is, fans know from watching these games where the talent is. And as you said, we've got a lack of experience on the coaching staff, which, for better or for worse, we're going to have to deal with. This is a project. I liked the fact that Tommy Rees and Marcus Freeman were able to look at the game film and look at what they were doing, realize that something had to be shifted, and they were willing to shift it. They were willing to say, we need to get guys like Chris Tyree more touches. We need to get him the ball in space, have our athletes do something for us, which I give them all the credit in the world for being willing to adjust and not to say, oh, I've been coaching for 27 years. You knew I was going to throw a Kelly quote in here, but I was happy that the staff was willing to make the adjustments they needed to make to win the game and not be worried about perception or the questions they might get. Well, why didn't, as you said, 13 touches in the first two games, 23 in the second. I mean, obviously that was an adjustment. Obviously that needed to be made, but the coaching staff had the, I don't know if the word is humility, but the willingness to say, this is what is going to help our team win, and we're going to shift and we're going to do it.
Yeah, and they obviously did. I mean, and look, I mean, Tyree is he was a 5-star, I think, recruit coming to us, wasn't he? I want to say he was on a couple of the recruiting. He was 5-star, but clearly a guy who's got talent who needs a few more touches. But the other thing, Ed, that I thought was kind of interesting was just, and I don't know, to be honest with you, I have not watched the actual clip of Tommy Rees going kind of crazy on
Drew Pine.
On Drew Pine, but just out of curiosity, just in terms of showing this, I mean, I think it's, I don't know, I do think
it's a meme forever, but
well, it speaks volumes at the point of the game. But if you look at that, this particular throw, so Pine, drops back, makes his reads. It's obvious that he's staying with this outside receiver, so he's got Mayer coming in. If Pine puts this ball anywhere on the right side of this hash, he's got plenty of room to run. Mayer does. And he breaks open, he makes the break, and Pine just completely misses him. Just way overthrown. Huge opportunity to throw it anywhere near the middle here, and he just doesn't execute. And look, I think it's a combination of what happened previously, right? Because with the start of that series, the very first series, we had a little dump pass in the backfield that Pine threw at his ankles and it goes incomplete. And it's like, okay, what happened? What's going on here? And I think it's indicative of just him not slowing the game down, not having the confidence to just take your time, make your reads, make the easy throw. Don't hurry up and rush this. Allow the game to come to you. And the frustrations with Tommy Rees, kind of hit a boiling point at that point, mostly because it was just a huge play in the game. And if you look at the stats, I mean, we started out pretty ugly on the first three series.
The old saying about winning is contagious. Well, I'm sorry, so is losing. And after Marshall and the way things started this past Saturday, you could make a really case that, not that it was a season on the brink, but, this is a football team that was, teetering in terms of just self-confidence, ability to execute. So I think you got to give them a little bit of credit. Obviously you can look at the statistics pre-Tommy Rant and post-Tommy Rant, and they were significantly better after he bit Pine's head off. But they kind of got their asses in gear. Now, whether that was coaching, whether that was some senior leadership, whether it was a combination of the two, or whether they just looked up at the scoreboard and looked across the line of scrimmage and said, how the, F are we losing to these guys? Whatever the reason was, that, a lot of this is mental. A lot of what I saw in the Marshall game was not like physical deficiencies. Marshall freaking went out and lost to Bowling Green 3 days ago. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of shocked me. I got to be honest with you. I was totally shocked by that. I just couldn't process that because I thought for sure they would roll them.
Well,
And I don't know.
those kinds of things are kind of predictable, right?
A big letdown after a big, huge win, big, huge game. Everybody's showering you with praise,
Right.
and then you lay an egg because that's what you typically do.
At the end of the day, we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds, right? So,
right.
So that is, but, so, listen, it was still a pretty sloppy freaking game. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, the bright spots were, Brian Mason, the special teams coach. I'm sorry, everybody's gonna, give Freeman and company grief about not having a successful portal when it comes to quarterback and receiver, and they probably deserve a little bit for that, for not at least bringing some guys in or trying to figure out how to do that. But Brian Mason did an excellent job identifying two specialists that we really needed. And so those guys, that's a bright spot. Sott again was very solid. He's got a good leg and he knows how to place the ball inside the 15-yard line. And that 47-yard field goal that guy kicked, I still don't know what his name is, Groupie or whatever his name is. He cranked it. I mean, that thing went,
that was huge. Absolutely huge.
The other thing is this is the first kicker we've had at Notre Dame in my memory. We've had some good ones, but this guy gets the ball into the air higher, quicker.
Yeah, in a hurry. I agree with you.
Yep. You watch his extra points, and his extra points are, 3/4 up on the goalpost when they go through from that short distance. That's pretty impressive. We haven't had that but anyways, okay, so that's a bright spot. Another bright spot is the sacks in the second half and the ability to get to the quarterback. And a third bright spot is absolutely having some push by the offensive line at the point of attack, getting to the second level, moving the California defense around a little bit by being able to run the ball in the second half. But there's still a litany of things, the penalties, we still are the thing that drives me crazy about defenses at all levels of football is, they talk about these coaches they love to use this phrase complementary football, where the polar opposite of complementary football is your offense goes and gets a touchdown, your defense immediately gives up a drive that leads to points. And we've done that, several times this year. I mean, the stuff, the defending the Hail Mary at the end was, abysmal. I mean,
he could have made the play. He literally, if he brings that in, it's a touchdown.
No, there was a very clear scenario whereby Notre Dame was 0-3 losing in overtime to Cal on a after having its first two turnovers of the year taken away by either penalty or a overturned call. So so I guess all I'm saying is that there's still an awful lot to clean up. But you've got to walk before you can run. And so Notre Dame took a step, albeit a hesitant step, in the right direction on Saturday. And another big step would be, coming out and punching North Carolina in the mouth, a team that is not sort of known for its toughness or its physicality, right?
And it's played nobody so far.
Nobody, exactly.
Well, they can put up points. I mean, they've proven that. And I think it's,
the lower echelon of Division I and the upper echelon of Division II, which I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but it's not like they played like a mid-level Big Ten team or something.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have more contrasting styles, right? You've got a team that probably has above average, skill position players against a team that has right now below average skill position players, and a team that has above average, front seven and offensive line play against a team that has, below average. I don't know. It's a very interesting matchup that way. And the way that, listen, that I think play calling is one of the most overrated things that people analyze. but Tommy Rees called a very, very good game on Saturday. You know, they didn't.
Yeah, we just didn't execute. I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of agree. I thought we just didn't execute.
Yeah, I mean, he did exactly what he had to do to win the football game with a quarterback who was having his first start, and with against an opponent that's soft underbelly, was being able to stop the run. He mixed up the stuff well. So that's what he's got to do again. I think it's a very similar assignment for this weekend. It's time of possession and limit the explosive plays on defense. And if Notre Dame does that, I think that they'll have another successful day. I don't think North Carolina is that great. So.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yep.
So, Coffee, I'm just kind of curious because this came up, and I think it's probably one of the first times where I'm gonna start to begin to question Freeman and his choices as a head coach. But at the end of the half, here on the play-by-play, they've got it at 4 seconds, but I want to say it was 6. I think the game clock was reset to 6 seconds. But anyways, you're inside the opponent's 50-yard line. You're at their 45, too far for a field goal, 6 seconds left, and he decides to punt it. And I just was kind of curious, and I don't know, there's a bunch of different ways to argue this point, but with 6 seconds left, you can easily drain the clock. That's not hard to do.
Well, because I'm one of those people who remembers Jarius Jackson getting injured taking a safety against LSU, however many years ago. And
yeah, but that's in your own end zone. That's a different story than being on the 45.
Though, I do agree with you. I think you've got minimal seconds left. This should be a pass that at least your quarterback can try. Worst case scenario, he throws an interception, a meaningless interception. Guy gets tackled at the 10, and
game's over. I mean, the half's over. Nothing happens.
I can see though, Marcus Freeman has a very solid connection to the psyche of his players. I think, as you said, he's a player's coach. We talked, I can't remember if it was before we started recording, about how there's differences between players like Lou Holtz or coaches like Lou Holtz and coaches like Dabo Sweeney and stuff like that who want to try to get with their players.
Kind of part of that new age approach. I get it.
I can see him looking at Drew Pine, who is playing uncharacteristically bad. I mean, we saw him play last year, played much more solid than he did this year, or in the first half of this
first
game.
Half of this.
So I could see him saying, okay, he's had a bad first half. I need to get him in the locker room and get his mind right. I need him to be the player he was for us last year when he was filling in for Cohen and all that. But is that going to happen if he throws a Hail Mary that I don't know if he's really physically capable of doing? He throws another pick, and God forbid something goes wildly wrong and it gets run back for a lot of yards. It puts him in a bad mindset. Should he have thrown the Hail Mary? Yeah, if I were in that position, I would have. But I can understand why he chose to do what he did.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason that it's a thing that we're talking about is because of the end of the half of the Oklahoma State game and the end of the half of the
Appalachian State. Appalachian State ends up winning the game.
Yeah. No,
that was nuts.
That was nuts. No, but you know what I'm saying is that he was criticized, and rightly so, for how he handled the end of the half against Oklahoma State, and he was criticized, probably rightly so, for how he handled the end of the half against Ohio State. And so these kind of things add up, and you're kind of wondering, like, what's the problem? And the other thing is, we all saw the internet clip of Drew Pine throwing the ball 60 yards in the air at the Manning camp this past summer. So we're like, why the hell don't they just, now of course he was in shorts and a t-shirt and had no rush, but still it's kind of like, why aren't they letting him do that?
Well, 45-yard line. So we're talking 45 yards.
Exactly. It was less than what he threw it in that clip. Yeah. So, listen,
it's not what it's not what I would have done, but I understand why he did it.
Sure. And, the other thing is that, do we really want to do that and then watch it hit Lindsey in the hands and fall to the ground? I mean, that would just make us even more annoyed and frustrated. So, but hey, listen, whatever. I mean, listen, there will be new things. I think the thing is that what we'll see this weekend is there'll be new things that'll make us, SMH, shaking our head. But there'll be, hopefully a few more things that demonstrate progress, right? That demonstrate a team that's coming around. And I think that, I was talking to Sully about this today, that they'll steal a game that we don't expect them to win, or they'll do something this year that will give us, more than just hope, because they've got they're not suddenly just some kind of, like, they didn't go from being, having, top 10 talent to being, Bowling Green, in 2 weeks. They just kind of lost their way.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I think upstairs more than physically. So
yeah, I would agree with you. And I think more than anything, all we want to see is we just want to see progression from week to week. Do you guys get better as a team? Do you execute better? Do you cut down on the penalties? Do you make the plays in the big moments? You just want to see some progression towards that, because then that indicates that, all right, we're doing the right things at practice. We're doing the right things from game to game. We're doing the right kind of adjustments. And that's what you want to see. You just want to know that we're progressing, and that's all we care about. And I think North Carolina has a big opportunity to show that. So let's see what we've learned from these first 3 games, and let's see something that shows up on the field this Saturday that indicates that we're heading in the right direction.
Well,
That's
what's going to be interesting to me about Saturday is, if you're the North Carolina, if you're Mac Brown and the North Carolina defensive coordinator, there's a pretty clear sort of approach to how you're going to defend this offense based on what you've seen, right? I mean,
make them throw the football. I'm going to put 8 guys in the box, and let's see what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. But, Notre Dame, has responses for that, right? They have, an All-American tight end. They have a running back that could also play slot receiver, in terms of his ability, right? They have, they have Kevin Bauman, I think, who is another effective receiver in sort of the mid-range game, which could be another target for Pine. So they have to be creative, and they have to, they can't, they're not going to win by, just throwing the ball downfield. They're going to have to sort of basically keep North Carolina honest. And so that'll be the little bit of the chess match that I'll be watching, because you're right.
Yeah.
The sort of the book on Notre Dame is not, it's not a mystery novel right now. It's not even, yeah, it's
pretty obvious where the gaping holes are. I mean, that's not hard to figure out.
It's a pamphlet. Yeah. It's a pamphlet. So,
all right. So Coffee, I think I mentioned this last week, but besides just doing the predictions, I want to get your take on where we finish at the end of the year record wise, because I think each week it'll be interesting to see what our thoughts are with that. But before you do that, you got to at least tell me what you're drinking, because I know you're a big bourbon guy, and I want to at least see. Since you've started this podcast,
I'm changing my handle on ND Nation from El Kabong to Drinks on YouTube. But
yeah, there you go.
No, this is Journeyman Silver Cross. Last weekend before the game, I was up with friends in Three Oaks. We did a tour of the distillery, sampled a whole bunch of stuff, and this was a fantastic bottle. So I grabbed some. So if those ND fans, if you are in South Bend and you're thinking, what am I going to do on a Friday? Or
it's like a 50-minute drive, right? 40?
Probably even less than that. But go up to Three Oaks, check Journeyman out. It is very, very well worth your time. And they are not paying me a dime to say this, so I think this is damn good. And it takes the edge off watching the first half of,
Yeah, there you go. The first four 3 and outs.
Oh God.
And I think they still have a really cool, crazy, fun putting green behind the distillery.
Yes, they do.
So,
and in fact, as I found out this weekend, it is designed on the with St. Andrews in mind. I mean, it's not just a flat putting green. There's hills and everything. And for $9, they'll give you a putter and a ball, and you can take a drink out in the back, and it's fantastic. So if you go to Journeyman, tell them the ND Nation guy from Dome and Domer told you to come out and have some fun. So
nice.
Again, not paying me a dime to say this, but anyway.
All right. So what's your prediction?
This season, for Saturday, in our prediction contest, I picked a 31-28 Notre Dame win. I know that North Carolina has scored some points, but they have scored some points against absolute nobodies. And I think playing a defense like Notre Dame, which, I mean, at least to me, seems to be playing better, at least incrementally, smallly incrementally, if that's a word, but every game, I think they're capable of showing up and then just seeing what the offense can do. And
Yeah,
let's, you know, the old saying about you make your best improvements between games 1 and 2. Let's see if that applies to starting quarterbacks also, because Drew, there's a difference between coming in off the bench, rescuing your team, and stepping in the first play from scrimmage and having to perform, especially at home with national television audience and 81,000 people looking at you. And I'm willing to give Drew Pine the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be better playing on the road with much lower expectations than he did this year. And as far as the season goes, I'm really concerned about what SC is going to do to us at the end of the season. But for right now, I'm willing to say we're going to end up 9-3.
Oh, I'll take that. At this moment, I'll take that all day long. All right, Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I hate that. I hate this game, but I'll say 8-4. Just I think between SC, Clemson, I hate to say BC and BYU. I think there's two.
BC's offensive line is terrible.
I know, but we're early in the year, and whatever. I think Notre Dame's going to lose to a team that they should beat, and they're going to beat a team that they should lose to. So I see 2 more losses. As far as Saturday goes, I think Coffee makes a great point. One of the things that impressed me about the Ohio State game is that Notre Dame came right out of the chute and they were composed. They didn't look like they didn't belong. They had a lot of guys playing for the first time, including the quarterback, basically, who came out 8 for 8. In other words, they did not. They were in the horseshoe. It was 100,000 screaming people. Whatever their preparation was with the noise, worked. So I think going on the road into a much more benign environment. I'm sorry, Chapel Hill, but give me a break compared to the horseshoe. I think that there is something to what Mike's talking about in terms of sometimes it's good to go on the road, right? Sometimes it's good to go and sort of feel like it's you guys against the world, and so I think that that's a positive. I agree that Pine will play better. I think he's a good, potentially a good game manager. And I do think that Notre Dame will play better. They kind of got a little bit of a monkey off their back, and they'll push North Carolina around at times. And to me, the big play, does kind of scare me. But I think that they will create some turnovers for the first time, because I think North Carolina is somewhat susceptible to committing them. And I think if they take care of the football, they'll win by, a touchdown. So I'll be a little bit more optimistic than Coffee, and I'll say that they win 28-20.
Second. Yeah, I kind of think my prediction. I was thinking
you were going to say something, Coffee.
No. I want to finish up with one question that has nothing to do with this game. So, Bram, you make your.
All right, I'll finish. So I think 34-27 is what I'm predicting, and I'm kind of leaning towards that. Notre Dame, 34-27 Notre Dame, and I think 8-4 is probably where we'll end up, because I think there'll be a game that we lose that we really shouldn't, but I think it'll be kind of weird circumstances, that kind of thing. But in any event, at the moment, that's where I see us. I do think that we, like Ed said, I think we'll kind of fuel off of being in that environment away, but not hostile like Ohio State. And I think we'll get some mojo going a little bit with this win. And I think it'll be a movement where we kind of see some improvement that starts to get us back on the right track and headed in the right direction.
Well, let me ask you guys a question that was prompted by a discussion I had offline with a buddy of mine. Should Steve Angeli start the UNLV game?
No. Why?
Totally depends. I mean, there's a lot to happen between now and then.
I mean,
How many-
knowing what we know now,
How
and
long were you
knowing
at
that we
Journeyman
want to
before the
know what
topic
we
came
have
up?
going into next year, is that the right game to give him a start and see what he's got?
How many hours had you been at Journeyman when this suggestion?
Two. Just two. We hadn't gotten to the tasting room yet. We were still in the distillery looking.
No,
at
but you know
one
what?
point.
In a sort of a way that you probably intended, you're making a good point. One of the problems to me, when you have a team like this, is that that is sort of definitely underperforming some expectations. Is that you lose a lot of good development time because you don't have any blowouts. You don't have games that you're winning 38-6 in the third quarter, and you don't get time for guys like Angeli or Tobias Merriweather, or in other words, you don't get the minutes on the field that could be really helpful in their development. So I think it's a really valid point, and while I still think it would be silly to start him. I do think that a goal should be to get him playing time. And maybe that means you've got to be a little bit creative with that. Maybe that means you got to take a little risk and put him in there if you're only up 21-0 or something like that for a series. The game is not completely salted away. And you're not going to have many opportunities to do that. It's going to be, UNLV or Navy or maybe BC or, if you're lucky and get a lead. But you make a good point. So I would definitely try and find a way to play him, but I think starting him is crazy.
Well, the reason I bring it up, and it's partially what you said, Ed, I think we're going to spend this year trying to figure out what we have, but I'm kind of thinking about next year, you've got CJ Carr as a quarterback commit, but he hasn't reclassified yet. And you still may be another year away from knowing what you have. What I think Notre Dame needs to know is, can they go into next year without needing a 2023 quarterback or a transfer quarterback? I mean, I'm not writing this season off by any means, but I think they need to know really what they've got. I mean, obviously you're not going to see Tyler Buckner for the rest of the season. I mean, he's gone. We're going to see a lot of Drew Pine over the next couple of games. We're going to know what he's capable of and who he's not capable of. I think we need to have some Steve Angeli time to say, what is this guy giving us? Because if we need someone to come in next year from the transfer portal, and I don't want Notre Dame to get mercenary like that, but if you're looking into next season, if CJ Carr is not going to be available or is going to be a freshman, is not going to necessarily get ready to execute, do you know if you have to hit the transfer portal hard to have a better season next year?
Well, regardless of what CJ Carr does, I mean, I think it's recruiting malpractice not to bring in at least one quarterback in every class. I agree.
Completely.
They're trying. They're trying to get somebody right now. Don't kid yourself. They're trying.
Yeah. No, I know they are.
They just can't get anybody.
But I think, well, that's because they put all their chips in the Dante Moore basket and it didn't pan out.
And it fell.
So no, but I mean, my preference would be that they bring in, a quarterback in this situation, just because you will have, hopefully by the end of the year, 3 guys that have played, right? You'll have Buckner, you'll have Pine, you'll have Angeli, who have at least seen the field. And you'll kind of know what you have. Now, I think the point Coffee is making is if you throw Angeli out there and he just looks like absolutely not a Division I Power 5 quarterback. Then,
which, for the record, I don't think that's what he's going to look like.
I agree.
I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And I agree that.
Well,
but then
to further your point, Coffee, I'll make a prediction here. I guarantee you that prior to the Clemson game, we see meaningful minutes from Angeli. Because I think for the very point that you pointed out, we got to know what we're dealing with. You can't go into next year without knowing what you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I think they're going to give him some reps, like Ed said, whether it's 21-0, they're going to have to gamble at that point because you got to see him. You got to at least get him in and see what you're dealing with. And I'll be shocked if we're not in that situation come Clemson with at least some sort of read on Angeli. And look, by the same token, I think that just college football in general, I mean, what are the chances Drew Pine's going to go without any kind of hiccups, whether it be the wind knocked out of you or whatever from now till then? It's highly unlikely he's not going to get pulled if for that reason alone, you know.
Considering this is Notre Dame football, to me, it's almost a 50-50 scenario that Pine exceeds expectations, that he finishes the year strong, that we've got a freaking nightmare on our hands next year because you've got a guy that's won 6 of his 7 starts, and he's managed games well enough to be a competent starting quarterback, but he's not, he's just not
all.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to put a game on his arm. You're not going to do that. Yeah.
Because that's how Notre Dame football goes these days.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We have the Ian Books of the world. We have, we have these guys that are, solid college quarterbacks that can get you so far, but probably not where you want to go. They're not Bryce Young. They're not, whatever, the Cubic, the next guy that looks like he's going to be terrific at Clemson. They're not, yeah, exactly. They're not, whatever. So,
whatever his name is. No, that's not the guy. The other guy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't.
The guy who does the thing. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, I think that is that if you really want to nail it down, at the end of the day, we need a top-notch quarterback that we have not had, arguably since Clausen. And I know people have different opinions about Clausen, but the one damn thing he was good at was accuracy, and we just haven't had that. And that's a shame.
Been better with better coaching.
It just doesn't make any sense that we can't recruit a 4-star quarterback to come to Notre Dame. I mean, that's just crazy in my mind. But it looks like some of that's changing, so let's hope for the best. But I definitely think that we need to at least see some evaluation on Angeli, and the only way you can evaluate him is get him in the game. So somehow we got to figure that out. We got to get him in.
We had a really small sample size, but before he got hurt, I'm probably going to get his name wrong. I really liked what I saw from that guy. Was his name Brendan Clark?
He
had a little bit
tough guy. Tough.
He had a little bit of swagger to him.
Yeah.
He seemed to have a real feel for the game. He was a competent. He moved, up and back in the pocket fairly well. Is Coffee putting on his Joe Montana jersey?
Yes,
yes. Yeah.
These
well, you can hope like hell.
Should have worn this weekend.
I don't see him coming anytime soon. So
no, but
unless CJ Carr turns out to be something that we don't know.
This style green with the gold letters and all of this.
Well, this is where I will give this is another thing I was talking about Sully today. I long for the days when we had at least 7 or 8 quarterbacks on the roster. and that, but
those were the days.
But think about it. I mean, that's the other side of the portal. I mean, if you want to be ruthless about this, you could have, in March and April, you could have 100 guys in your roster, right? Yeah. And then you basically just go right down the line, in early June and tell which ones you think need to hit the portal or not. Think they need to tell them that they have to, and that's how you get to 85. Because that's what teams are doing right now. They're just stockpiling, at least the elite team, right? Totally. And then they just basically, whatever you want to call it, they basically just have cuts.
No,
and if you're Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or Ryan Day, you can do that, and you just kind of decide who your best 85 are. But you start with a pool of about 105.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it is what it is.
And listen, you either sort of believe in the way Notre Dame does things and you hold that as sort of part of something that you like to carry around, or you go in that direction. And I'm not advocating for either one, but it's a very different way of doing business.
Yep.
And I apologize
for
spending the show for 10 minutes. But
there you go. All right, good deal. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Ed Jordanek and Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Brammer. Thanks for listening.